Welcome to Politics and Psychology. Today we are discussing when you easily forgive Trump and what this reveals about you. So Donald Trump was elected as the 45th U.S. president during the 2016 presidential elections. Prior to being the president, Donald Trump was most known for being a real estate developer, successful entrepreneur, and reality TV star. His father was Fred Trump, and Fred owned and operated a successful real estate company called Elizabeth Trump and Son, and it was named after Fred Trump's mother and himself. And their company developed properties for middle-class white families in New York, specifically in Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. Trump's father, Fred Trump, was also a prominent member of Brooklyn's Democratic Party. So initially, Trump and his family were Democrats. Trump began his business career while still enrolled in undergraduate college, and he invested in a Philadelphia real estate opportunity. When he graduated from college in 1968, he returned to New York and joined his father's business full time. Now, Trump, his family focused more on middle-income individuals, and Trump really had a vision and a desire to enter the high-end real estate and the luxury department. And so because of this, he had his first big deal in 1976, and it was to take a property that was a hotel going bankrupt, and he wanted to be able to develop the Grand Hyatt Hotel on this property. But because neither Trump nor his family had enough money to do this big project, what Trump decided was very business savvy. So he used his personal relationship with the Hyatt Hotel chain as well as his father's political clout to negotiate a very unusual and unprecedented arrangement with the New York City government. In that arrangement, Trump received a 40-year tax abatement, which meant that after inflation and changes in the tax code, he saved approximately $400 million in taxes. So Trump then used this promise of those $400 million savings to both persuade the bankrupt hotel owner, that was the hotel that was going bankrupt, and he convinced this owner to not only sell him this property at a reduced rate, but also to convince the Hyatt Hotel chain to partner with him for his idea and vision of the Grand Hyatt Hotel. Trump continued to make very savvy real estate moves so that by the end of the 1980s, he had pretty much established himself as being a major real estate developer. He also expanded into the casino businesses in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and he built the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, as well as Trump Castle. In 1990, he built the Trump Taj Mahal at a cost of nearly $1 billion. But despite these major business operations, the Trump organization faced significant financial challenges. This also began his history of illegal behavior patterns. For example, in the same year that he built the $1 billion Trump Taj Mahal, Trump could not afford his interest payment on that loan. So what his father did was purchased over $3 million in casino chips at Trump Castle, and then Trump used that $3 million in casino chips to inflate his revenue, and then he took out a loan against that inflated revenue recording. A New Jersey judge ruled that this was an illegal loan, and then the state of New Jersey fined Trump $65,000. In the years that followed, Trump used bankruptcy protection to eliminate his debts, such as with loans, and he filed 6 bankruptcies between 1991 and 2009. As his real estate and gambling businesses continued to fail, then what he did succeed in was using his name to get brands and brand deals, and by just licensing his names to other businesses to use from which he would get royalties. And he did this in the U.S. and also overseas. And working with ghostwriters, meaning someone's name is on their book or novel as a person who wrote it, but it was really a ghost writer, meaning someone who was a more advanced or a talented creative writer or a technical writer, depending on the content of the book. They actually wrote the content and had little or no input from the person who said it was the author, but they agreed to give up their skills, sell their skill, so that they can help the other person who's usually more famous or more notable to put their name as the author on there. So this is what Trump did for several books, and many of them did very well. In fact, he was very popular in his book called Trump, The Art of the Deal, that was first released in 1987. So he did very well in the book writing industry. From 1996 to 2015, Trump was a part owner of the Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, and Miss Universe beauty pageants. And his expansion into the entertainment industry was what really came about and brought him to more well-known commercial fame through different ages and different industries, not just real estate. And that was because he was on their hit reality TV show called The Apprentice, and this was on NBC and ran from 2004 to 2015. However, in 2015, during his first presidential campaign, Trump made racist attacks on Latin American immigrants. So in response, Univision and NBC stopped broadcasting both the pageants, and they also sued Trump. They also fired him from The Apprentice. The next year, in 2016, Trump announced that he had settled the lawsuits with NBC and Univision and also sold his stake in the pageant. In August 2016, the New York Times reported that his real estate holdings held at least $650 million in debt. And it was also widely reported that Trump had a history of eliminating his debt so that he did not have to pay taxes. So all of this combined, it resulted in Trump and Trump's businesses having a large number of lawsuits. In 2016, USA Today reported that either Trump or one of his companies had been involved in 1,450 legal cases in both federal and state courts, where Trump was either the one being sued for non-payment or the one being sued for other breaking of his contracts. Some of these cases were high profile, so after his election in 2016, the Trump Organization settled out of court several of these cases, and 3 of them involved allegations of consumer fraud. One was his business called Trump University. He also closed a second, which was a charitable nonprofit foundation called Trump Foundation, and he closed this because it was discovered that he had not contributed any of his personal money to the foundation since 2008, and in addition to that, he was using the charity as a cover to launder money, where he would get money through the form of donations from individuals, give them a tax write-off receipt where they could use that for tax exemption purposes, and then he would use the money to either give himself a loan or for other programs and businesses that he was in charge of. Also, throughout his real estate career, Trump continued to engage in financial fraud, such as this charitable nonprofit and such as him inflating his revenue when he was working with the casinos. For example, in his New York civil fraud trial, Trump was found guilty of lying for decades about his wealth and inflating his net worth on financial statements, then using those financial statements to get loans and to make other business deals. So if you remember in the beginning, he first made his break in real estate by being very savvy, but the difference between him getting a legal loan at that time by borrowing against an actual agreement by the government to defer his taxes is that this time or after that, he tried to continue making gains, not through legal means, but by falsely changing his revenue and then using those statements that he lied on about his revenue or his income to then get higher loans, get into more debt, then he could not pay them back, or his businesses would fail, and then he could not, or he would default on those loans because he could not pay them back. So in the first instance, the deal was similar, but it was legal, and everyone knew all the nuances of the contract. In the subsequent deals, those were illegal, and Trump was lying about his arrangements and his income. Now, Trump's first incident of public criticism and scandal came in 1973 when the U.S. Justice Department accused the Trump company of discriminating against African American would-be renters, meaning that he consistently and strategically declined applicants if they were African American, but did accept renters if they were white. So although the company did not admit wrongdoing, it did settle the matter by agreeing to rent more of his apartments to black tenants. In addition to financial fraud, Trump has faced criminal charges related to sexual assault. A jury found Donald Trump liable for sexually abusing the advice columnist E. Jean Carroll in 1996. When the victim, E. Jean Carroll, accused Trump of rape and then tried to report this to the newspapers or to the news media outlets, Trump, remember he's very connected, for years he ridiculed her and he stopped her from not only getting employment but also would slander her name and openly ridiculed her and dismissed her claims of rape. So, of course, who's going to want to hire or be with someone who's going around accusing a powerful man of rape when he is so obviously powerful, could get any woman that he wants, and therefore would have no need to rape? So, because he was consistent in this messaging, it caused her a lot of professional harm as well as psychological harm. And for this reason, the jurors also found Trump liable for defaming Carroll over her allegations. In addition to E. Jean Carroll's accusations of sexual assault, there were over 24 other women who have also accused Trump of sexual misconduct, and this dated back to the 1970s. And he has also been found liable in court for sexual abuse and for rape. Several women have described Trump forcibly reaching under their skirts when they were not inviting him to. Others said that he kissed them without their consent. And several other beauty pageant contestants claimed that Trump would inappropriately walk in on them when they were changing from their costumes, whether they were practicing for the pageant or in other Miss USA activities. Trump even admitted to doing this and bragged about it in an April 2005 interview on the Howard Stern show. Trump said that he would go backstage before the pageant shows and he would be, quote, the only man in the room where women were just standing there with no clothes on. As the owner, I sort of get away with things like that. So his accusers range from beauty pageant contestants to political campaign staffers, and it includes a former Fox News TV anchor, a receptionist at a Trump hotel, a People's Magazine reporter, and of course, E. Jean Carroll, who was also a journalist as well as a longtime advice columnist. If E. Jean Carroll's name sounds familiar, it might be because not only were her lawsuits more recent, but also they were more publicized than other cases, and this was thanks to the effort of social media. Another victim's name that you might know and know very well is Stormy Daniels. Now, her real name or her birth name is Stephanie Clifford. So Stormy Daniels, we'll just use that name since that's how we know her mainly in the media. Stormy Daniels is a former pornography actress or porn star who also accused Trump of raping her in 2006. The scandal grew during 2018 when the public learned that Trump paid Stormy Daniels off to not report the allegations of rape at that time, and the way that he paid her off was by falsifying his business records to cover up where the money really came from and where the money actually went and why that money was being given to Stormy Daniels. And the whole reason why it became a very political and very publicized event this year is because of the fact that he was using this hush money to protect his 2016 presidential campaign. Now, hush money, if you've heard of the term, it's money that's paid to hush or keep quiet someone so they don't tell on you for doing something. So they give money so the person will keep that information or that event secret. So in the 2024 lawsuit, through court testimony, Trump was found guilty on 34 counts of falsifying his business records in order to hide any of one of three other crimes, and this included tax law violations, Trump's own participation in the conspiracy to influence the 2016 presidential election through unlawful means, and by this, it meant that Trump directly falsified his company records to conceal the nature of the hush money reimbursements. And third, it became known as the Trump hush money trial because of the 3 major incidents in which he gave large sums of money to keep his acts secret so that it wouldn't be known of his marital infidelity or his association with porn stars, and that he wanted to cover this up again so it wouldn't tarnish his 2016 presidential campaign. So the first one was when he paid the National Enquirer $30,000 to a Trump Tower doorman who saw him with the person who was the victim. The second was a $150,000 payment to former Playboy model Karen McDougal, and he had an affair with her for over 10 months while he was married to Melania. And then it was the $130,000 that Trump's then lawyer, Michael Cohen, that he gave to then arrange through different hands a way to try to cover up the payment of the hush money to Stormy Daniels. And the reason why they were trying to keep Stormy Daniels quiet is, one, not only was she a pornography star that Trump did not want to be associated with his campaign, but also that, well, if she's a porn star, isn't she used to having sex? So why would you have to rape her? So what Stormy was alleging to and trying to get individuals to understand was that I was trying to get my life turned around to get out of the porn industry. And I trusted Trump because he was in reality TV. He told me he can get me into the entertainment industry. When we met at the hotel, which most businesses, most operations often do meet at hotels, when I was told to meet him there, I thought it was because we were going to talk about me breaking into the TV industry. But instead, when I get there, he's forcing himself on me, and I felt like I had to give in because, this is what I'm known for, so I guess I have to do it, and I don't have any power to say no to him. And incidentally, this happens to a lot of individuals who feel mental pressure, and they are forced not by being tied down and beaten up and then forcibly raped, but through the psychological pressure of knowing that there are power dynamics that you are still feeling forced to perform an act, especially when that's sexual and that you don't invite. That is what constitutes rape, and that's how Stormy Daniels was able to prove that rape did indeed occur, and the $130,000 that was used to compensate her for her psychological suffering. So at the time of that Stormy Daniels rape in 2006, remember that Trump was still married to Melania Trump, and she was 5 months pregnant. So Trump has been married 3 times and divorced twice. In 1977, Trump married his first wife, Ivana Zelnikova. Donald and Ivana, I said that so authentically. I'm very impressed with myself. Anyway, so Donald and Ivana divorced in 1992 after widespread news of his affair with American actor Marla Maples. Trump and Marla then married in 1993, and this was 2 months after she gave birth to their daughter, Tiffany. They were eventually separated in 1997 and divorced in 1999. But during their separation in 1998, Trump met Melania, so he was still legally married to someone else. So he met Melania, and she was a centerfold model similar to Playboy, and they married in 2005. And during his marriage to Melania is when the majority of the Miss USA and other pageant allegations of sexual misconduct occurred. And as mentioned, during their marriage is also when Stormy Daniels was raped and where E. Jean Carroll was also raped by Trump. So when we look at Trump's behaviors beginning in 1976, we see that he is definitely a very business-savvy man when it comes to making deals and making connections. He is very skilled at creating the image that he wants and the narrative he wants, and successful in the art of negotiation and power plays. So despite all of this greatness and business savvy, it's his narcissism that leads him into illegal or corrupt behaviors. So despite being successful in making these deals, He does not have a history of keeping his end of the deals, and to get out of them, he engages in dishonorable or illegal activities. He knows how to wiggle his way out of promises, and he has even said in a 2015 presidential debate that, well, yeah, I filed bankruptcies. That's because I use the laws to my country to benefit me, and I'm pretty smart. In addition to not paying his loans and filing bankruptcy to escape his debt, Trump also has a history of not paying his employees. In a 2016 investigation by USA Today, the report found hundreds of liens, judgments, and at least 60 lawsuits against Trump and his businesses, specifically for him not fully paying his workers for their labor, and in some instances refusing to pay even his own lawyers or refusing to pay his real estate brokers their commissions that they were due. He also had at least 24 violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act for not paying employees minimum wage or overtime pay. For example, the report found that in 1990, when he was doing that $1 billion Trump Taj Mahal buildup, he did not pay at least 253 subcontractors either in full or on time. We also see that Trump has a history of not keeping his marital commitments and vows. He has cheated on all three of his wives. He married one of his mistresses, with him having conceived their child while he was married to someone else. He cheated on his current wife while she was pregnant and had multiple other affairs and acts of sexual misconduct while married to her meaning Melania. So these acts of sexual misconduct include both rape and sexual assault, with him having paid hush money more than once and settled out of court with these victims more than once. So with this history, what is it about him that made so many people still vote for Trump in 2016 and still want to vote for him in 2020 and then 2024? After he won the 2016 election, his presidency launched the beginning of much of the racial tension and political divide in our country. And this is partly because the then President Trump remained authentic in his racist-based beliefs about immigrants, Latinos, and African Americans. He remained sexist. He also remained strategic in building his alliances, and this resulted in him appointing federal Supreme Court judges and local judges, and with these judges later refusing to press charges against him for his responsibility for the January 6th insurrection, his other recorded acts of election interference for the 2020 presidential transfer to President Biden, or for ballot tampering. His actions were also overlooked by these judges when Trump encouraged the January 6th insurrectionists to kill his own vice president, Mike Pence. And most recently, one of his judge appointees dismissed a case entirely against Trump in his classified documents case. Even among voters for 2016 and his current 2024 campaign, there is still a large group of individuals who aggressively defend former President Trump and have overlooked his past and his present. So what does it reveal about you or about someone else who is so easy to forgive Trump? From a psychological perspective, the basic profile of such an individual is 1, someone who is also narcissistic, meaning that they believe they deserve special accommodations. They might see themselves as smarter than others, and that if they can avoid paying debts or keeping accountable to their words, it's because they believe that they are very smart and business savvy, and that they are not being unfair, but that they are being smart. They might also believe that because they are smart and better than the average person and more special than the average person, that this means that they believe others to be lower than them and less important than themselves. Therefore, they don't see their actions as wrong, and they regard others as having either less rights or having no rights compared with their own rights, their preferences, or their desires. Or a second major profile could be that it's someone who has committed the same or similar acts that Trump has done, and that either they have no remorse for their own actions or they don't want to acknowledge their past actions. Or maybe they're on the receiving end. They might be someone who has stayed in a relationship with someone like Trump, and they therefore believe that Trump should also be forgiven or that his actions were justified. For example, if you cheated on your spouse and believe that you should be forgiven, then you are also likely to forgive Trump having extramarital affairs or cheating more than once. Or if you are a spouse who was cheated on and you were cheated on multiple times by your spouse, then you are also easily able to forgive Trump and to see his actions as forgivable, because if you had to view his actions as unforgivable, then you would have to have the uncomfortable question of, well, then why am I staying with someone who's cheated on me? So in order to reduce that psychological discomfort, the individual has to acknowledge that their cheating spouse is to be forgiven, and therefore, since that person is to be forgiven and forgivable, then therefore so is Trump. So it's easier to disregard Trump's infidelity so that you can also disregard your own pain by being cheated on or your own guilt for doing the cheating. Likewise, if you are a person who cheated on your taxes, or you are a business owner and you have altered your business records to get a loan or other acts of financial fraud, then you will also easily forgive Trump for his history of fraud or unpaid debts. And if you're sexist, category number 5, then you might believe that women who accuse Trump of rape and sexual assault were lying, and that the only reason they were legally found guilty is because the judge was weak, or our judicial system is weak, or Trump was being treated unfairly. So to sum it all up, if you have a personal history of lying, you will easily believe that Trump can be forgiven for his lies. If you are a cheater in your marriages or finances or business, then you will easily forgive Trump for also cheating. Or if you are a narcissist and you easily steal or take from others, then you will also easily forgive and maybe even applaud Trump and his ability to do the same. When you easily forgive Trump, despite knowing of how he has harmed others or his history of deceit, it's likely that you share the same personal character as Trump. Or it's likely that you have knowingly allowed others to commit acts of lying, cheating, and stealing, and therefore you subconsciously or even consciously conclude that you must also forgive Trump for these acts. And because forgiving Trump is easier than having to accept your responsibility for what you allowed others to do to you or to other victims, then it is psychologically safer to forgive Trump so you can also forgive and forget your own experiences. So from a psychological perspective, it makes perfect sense because you're trying to focus on your psychological discomfort, your anxiety or depression, and to get rid of those uncomfortable feelings. It's easier to focus on the lesser of two evils. And those are part of psychological defenses to avoid psychological discomfort or trauma. And those are also examples of how individuals, their personal character and their own history will allow them to easily forgive Trump. There are also individuals who easily forgive Trump, not because they can personally relate, but because they have become part of a group that encourages a unified forgiving of Trump. They easily forgive Trump by disregarding the whole truth and focusing on only certain parts of Trump's career or character. The individuals in these type of groups, they usually easily forgive Trump, not because they approve or disapprove of his behaviors, but despite his behaviors. They easily forgive him because they belong to a group of people that collectively supports and forgives Trump. And this might bring to your mind the Republican Party because Trump is now a Republican. The majority of Republicans easily forgive Trump because they view his personal character as less important than his political power. They believe that political party unity is more important than appearing divisive, which of course from a branding standpoint is great. But for ethics and integrity, not so much. And they also believe that being unified in supporting Trump is essential to their political party holding power. On an individual level, members of the group may actually personally disagree with Trump's past or current behaviors, and they're not blind to what he has done or is doing, or his acts going against their own values or morals. So on the inside, in their private thoughts or their family dinners, they don't forgive Trump, but on the outside, they publicly support him. And what this reveals is that they are willing to sacrifice their own beliefs and morals because it personally benefits them and secures their ability to remain within the group. When you look at a human psychological perspective, think of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. On the basic level, group belonging is part of that. And group belonging is a strong human need. It's a basic human need. And that is what you would see in the Republican Party being very paramount. In the last 3 years, we have seen that not only will Republicans remove and rally against any other Republican who does not conform to their agreed upon messaging or agreed upon actions and comments, but that they will even publicly shame that person. Therefore, the Republicans who inwardly disagree with Trump but have strong needs for group belonging and career security, then it will be these Republicans who have and who will place party unity over their values. And this makes the actions of publicly supporting and forgiving Trump much easier for them to do. Now, in contrast to this type of personality profile, there is another group of individuals who also easily forgive Trump. And this group forgives Trump because they believe that he personifies their personal morals and their religious values. And this group categorizes themselves as Christians or evangelical Christians. So let's start with what is Christianity. Christianity is a religion founded upon the belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that through Jesus' death, a believer in Jesus can obtain forgiveness and salvation from his or her sins. Evangelical Christians are just a large group of Christians, and they also believe that there must be a very strict obedience to the Bible and to regard the Bible as the ultimate authority. And for this reason, evangelicals tend to be more conservative, not only in their political stances, but also in their theology, their social beliefs, and they are more conservative than any other branch of Christianity. However, the same evangelicals who easily forgive Trump have disregarded the Bible almost in its entirety, and they disregard biblical scriptures not because of political benefit, but because they choose to either disregard those parts of the Bible that make it difficult to support Trump's behaviors, or they just change the meaning of those scriptures so that they can justify supporting Trump. And just to be more accurate, it's not that they really think that they have to forgive Trump, because instead they see him as being innocent and therefore having no need for forgiveness. And this reveals to us that this group of evangelicals has deceived themselves by distorting the very doctrine that they believe or that they claim that they believe in. So unlike an individual or a group of individuals who publicly support him but may inwardly feel very different, the evangelicals publicly and privately proclaim that Trump is a man who values family, that he is a man of God, a family man, a good father, and that he's an upstanding figure in community and for our country. However, if they are also known to be very conservative and to regard the Bible as the ultimate authority, it's contradictory to believe that in the Bible and then to also believe that Trump embodies biblical virtues. So if the Bible speaks against fornication and adultery, and it's contradictory, obviously Trump has fornicated and he also has committed adultery. As I mentioned, Trump was unfaithful to each of his 3 wives and even conceived children with his mistresses, but then they still call Trump a man who honors family. The Bible speaks against stealing, but Trump has a consistent history of stealing money from others by refusing to pay his staff, the contractors or bills or lawyers, or even individuals who rightfully earn commissions off of real estate that he already profited from for their sales. And most of these individuals, they have families of their own. So evangelicals promote family and honesty, but they're overlooking that Trump not only stole money, also stealing from families that they have to support. In the Bible, even Jesus paid his taxes, but yet Trump brags about not paying his taxes. The Bible speaks against racism, and yet Trump has been outspoken in making racist and discriminatory comments as well as in his behaviors, both as an individual and as a business. One of the hallmarks of the Bible is the Ten Commandments, and this is for individuals who are Christian, Catholic, or Jewish. So the Ten Commandments of the Bible, one commandment is, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor," which means to be honest and to not lie against another person. Yet Trump does this every day in social media, and in every press conferences, he is bearing false witness. So unfortunately, many of the Christian and evangelicals who blindly and aggressively support Trump, they do not appear to have an accurate understanding of the doctrine that they profess to believe in, which is the Bible. And it's this lack of understanding that makes room for them to approve of behaviors that the Bible explicitly condemns. In some cases, this lack of understanding is due to false teachings of the Bible, but in other cases, it's a deliberate twisting of the Bible to either achieve a political power or to make just excuses for bad behavior because you just like Trump. Or it's a case of being selective in what they believe in the Bible because it serves their personal goals or desires. In the case of Trump, Christians who easily forgive him while claiming to be strong believers in the Bible, they could only do both if they change one. So because you can't change Trump and you find him as president to be more valuable, then you will then have to change your meaning of the Bible. Or then you'll decide to pick and choose what scriptures to believe so that way you can make a justifiable sense to then believe the Bible, but also support someone who is the antithesis or the opposite of what you say that you believe as a conservative Christian. So for example, in the Bible's book of Galatians, the scripture tells us that, quote, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." Yet Trump does not promote peace, but encourages division. Trump is not kind, but says very mean lies and character slamming against anyone who does not agree with him. Trump does not practice faithfulness in his marriage or business dealings. Trump has sexually assaulted and raped over 24 women, meaning he does not practice gentleness. And we have post after post, multiple actions after reactions of evidence of Trump lacking self-control. So when evangelical Christians easily forgive Trump, it's more than just the forgiving of others as the Bible directs Christians to do. Instead of just forgiving him and then letting him learn and then encouraging him to become greater and greater, then it's a complete dismissal of the Bible altogether. It's also a complete dismissal of the group's stand on being conservative on social issues. So you cannot support Trump saying you're an evangelical Christian and at the same time say that you support conservative values or politics, because Trump is the opposite of being a political conservative, and in his personality and in his businesses, he is not conservative in any aspect of his character or value. So looking at the groups of individuals who either engage in us all acting the same because it's a political benefit, or we all support Trump and act the same because of our Christian beliefs, then when Christians in general and evangelical Christians specifically, when they easily forgive Trump and they strongly believe that he is a man of faith and a man who represents their religious beliefs, then this is only possible because they have been deceived in what they believe about Jesus, the Bible, or Christianity. Or as I mentioned, it's because they will then pick and choose what they believe to make themselves more comfortable with their own actions or the actions of others, or to justify the unchristlike behaviors or the behaviors the Bible specifically encourages Christians and Christian leaders either to do or to not do. So, for example, Jesus and throughout the Bible, Christians are taught to embrace immigrants and foreigners. And here are just a few scriptures. In Leviticus chapter 19, it says that when a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. In Exodus chapter 23, it says, do not oppress a foreigner. You yourself know how it feels to be foreigners because you were foreigners in Egypt. Now let's look at the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi chapter 3. So I will come to put you on trial. I will be quick to testify against sorcerers, adulterers, and perjurers, which means liars, against those who defraud laborers of their wages, who oppress the widows and the fatherless, and deprive the foreigners among you of justice. And now for another New Testament, which is the after the birth of Jesus. And this the scripture says, love your neighbor as yourself. So yet, despite having multiple biblical scriptures such as these, Trump and evangelicals who aggressively support Trump consistently speak against immigration and against giving help to refugees. But if you are really looking at the Bible and coming from a biblical mindset, then you would see that Jesus himself was a refugee. The first book of the New Testament is called Matthew. And if you look at Matthew chapter 2, then you'll hear the story of Jesus' birth and how when Jesus was born, the Bible tells us that the King Herod was killing all children 2 years of age and younger. And so in order to help their child not only live, but have a better life, then they fled to Egypt to escape their son being killed. So how can you be a conservative or an evangelical Christian, and we have a requirement to love your neighbor as yourself and to show mercy to foreigners, but at the same time hold racist-based beliefs about migrants and refugees? Going along that logic, then Trump would feel justified in having deported Jesus and his parents, or would have prevented them from crossing the border at all. So when we look at the religious self-deception that is revealed among evangelical Christians, in some instances it has become so deeply embedded that many believe that Trump was not only appointed by God to save America, but that Trump himself is a prophet. If you look at a 2020 survey, I'll include the link in the description of this episode, 2 political scientists reported that nearly 50% of white Protestants who attended church, it was actually 49%. So 49% of white Protestants who attended church at least one time each week believed that Trump was anointed by God to be president to save our country. Now, this is a common thing among many religions to believe that the leader was appointed by God. But in this particular instance, the Protestants are believing that he was appointed to save our country. Many evangelicals also believe that Trump is the modern King Cyrus, Cyrus. And this is the King Cyrus from the Bible. And they proclaim that Trump is fulfilling the Isaiah chapter 45 Cyrus prophecy. Even if you don't look at the Bible, you can look through history and see that Cyrus the Great was a Persian king, and he took over and expanded the Babylonian Empire. But despite his short reign of approximately 8 years, then Cyrus had a significant impact on the Jewish exiles who had been taken into captivity in Babylon. Cyrus granted the Jewish community the freedom to return to the promised land and to rebuild their temple. And if you look in the Bible, King Cyrus is mentioned over 30 times, and Isaiah chapter 45 verse 1 refers to him as God's, quote, anointed. So now let's look at the psychology behind these beliefs of Trump being the Cyrus of today. So Cyrus was a Persian and a foreigner of Babylonian politics, which meant that not only was he not Jewish, but he wasn't religious at all. But he played a very strong role in helping the Jewish people not only return to their promised land, but also be able to practice their religious beliefs in worshiping God. Now, evangelicals using distorted thinking are then able to justify easily forgiving Trump because then their view is okay, well, if he's the opposite of our Christian values and if he goes against what the Bible says, then he's just like King Cyrus. He's an outsider, but he's committed to helping us in our politics in America return to the land, which is our America, the land of the free, return our land to us so that we can live as a united nation under God. And they can also use the distorted thinking of justifying that Trump can violate the Ten Commandments, he can violate Jesus's teachings and the Bible because he doesn't have to abide by them or even be a Christian because he's an outsider like Cyrus who will be able to deliver us and save our country. Also, because Cyrus reigned for over 8 years, then they equate that to 2 presidential terms. So when you think about the aggressiveness and the very strong emotions when it came to 2020 Trump losing the election, if you have strong believers who believe that not only was Trump anointed and appointed by God to win the 2016 election, but because he did not win the 2020 election, it wasn't because God didn't want him there, but it was because of election interference. And it was election interference that caused us to go away from the will of God. And so, of course, if this is what someone's believing from a religious standpoint, they're going to fight very hard to reinstate the person who they thought was the prophetic nominee and that deserved and was appointed by God to be the president for 2020 to then fulfill the consecutive 4 years plus 4 years, so the 8 years of the prophecy that they are saying that Trump is the Isaiah 45 Cyprus of. So Cyrus also promised to restore the proper worship of the Jews. So evangelicals are wrongly applying this to Trump's quote unquote anointing, and there's no clear reason why, other than there was a huge upset among Christians, whether they're evangelical or not, when President Obama, who was a Democratic president, when he, during his administration, legalized same-sex marriages. So when you combine this with Republicans branding their political party as the moral political party, combined with evangelical Christians who mostly vote Republican, then when Trump became the Republican nominee, to many evangelicals who were desperate for change in our country, then they saw Trump as the anointed by God candidate who would restore conservative values and who would restore Christian and biblical views of marriage. But despite the uncovering and the clear findings of Trump still engaging in behaviors that are illegal or still engaging in behaviors that are immoral according to the Bible and conservative teachings of evangelical Christians, many of the Christians still support Trump, if not worship Trump, by then assigning him the title of being the current day prophecy of King Cyrus. So looking back at the main profiles of individuals and groups that easily forgive Trump, we can see that there are 5 main profile categories. And these are: 1, it's easy to support Trump if you have the same personal character as Trump. Or 2, if you have allowed others to commit the same acts of Trump and you have forgiven them. 3, you are willing to sacrifice your own private values to publicly support Trump because you know it could personally benefit you. Or 4, you're willing to change your religious beliefs to justify your actions and to reduce religious guilt. Or the 5th category, 5, Maybe you deceived yourself to believe false teachings and interpretations of the Bible so that you are now more likely to be vulnerable to believing other false teachings or believing and worshiping a man rather than the Word of God or the Bible. So if you fit into any of these categories, or if you find yourself making moral compromises in politics, your personal life, or your career or your business, then please just pause, for a day or an hour and just examine your actions as well as your fears. So the emotion of fear is very powerful and it can motivate people to do things that they would not normally do. So from a political standpoint, if you think that your family, that your way of life, or that your religion is going to be attacked or prevented, then that could be a very strong fear, but you may let your fear consume you and allow that to make you more vulnerable to distorted belief or group thinking, where you just think the way that your group thinks rather than thinking for yourself. So when you're thinking about fears, think about, well, what are you afraid to lose? Or what pain are you trying to avoid that makes it easier to compromise your morals or your religious beliefs? Today, we were using former President Trump just as an example of how people who are desperate for change, or individuals who fear being rejected, or those who are easily manipulated through religion, we can see that with Trump, in real time, emotions can lead to distorted thoughts, and these thoughts lead to distorted beliefs. And ultimately, once your core beliefs are distorted, then you are significantly more likely to make decisions and choose relationships or opportunities that will eventually hurt you or take you very far from the person that you once were or the values that you once held. And when we do consider the actions of Trump, whether it's Trump or any other presidential candidate, it doesn't mean that a candidate has to be perfect and without character flaws. And despite Trump's acts of lying, cheating, stealing, or assaulting, you can still vote for him if you believe that he is the best candidate. And you can acknowledge the moral failures of others who made the same mistake as yourself. So don't think that you can't vote for someone because they do have flaws or major flaws. You can vote for them, but just make sure that you are voting for them while still being aware of their faults, rather than trying to ignore or bury them. And if you are a Christian, try not to be so eager for change that you become willing to overlook the biblical teachings that you believe. And maybe you're a person who doesn't have a particular faith, and it might be that for you, your disappointment with our government and our political system is so high that your expectations for a president have become so low. So try to resist political apathy and thinking that your vote doesn't count or that you don't need to vote. Still vote for the person who, after you put your time and attention into learning what that person is saying they're going to do, look at what the track record of what they have actually done, and then vote with a clear mind for the candidate who you think, based on the track record, will be more positive for our country as a whole. And also resist any fears or thoughts of rejection, that you vote only for one particular candidate because you don't want to be rejected from a group or because you want to be accepted into a group, because you never know. Your difference of opinion might be the one that gives your group or the group you're wanting to belong to the courage to be different, to speak the truth, and maybe even to inspire change. And in all instances, if you are making a political decision out of anxiety or fear, then please stop, take a moment or a week to just gather your thoughts, do research, and make your decision off of a clear, calm mindset and not from anxiety or the need to make change because you're desperate for change. Be clear in your thinking and clear in your political choices. Well, that ends our time for today. But please continue this conversation using science and love. Walk the path of life. And if you run too fast,